What's the name of the distillery this is from?
This is Finger Lakes Distilling.
Oh, it's from Finger Lakes Distilling. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you saying that, and then I was like, maybe I was just thinking of the place.
Well, you were confused because you thought it was in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah.
You think everything's
on multiple levels.
In the intro, we know you don't know the difference between anywhere in the Midwest at all, so that's fine.
So, is the Finger Lakes in the Midwest?
Well, I mean, it's New York.
I don't think that's the Midwest. That's like the East.
It's it's sort of
On the East Coast, James.
not upstate New York.
Okay.
We're bad at geography. That's really what.
Well, I do know that even
it's
upstate
New England.
New York
It's
is
New
on
England.
the east
Yeah, it's
and
New England.
the east side of America. Okay.
I could drink all day, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like I don't care.
You can't drink out of this class for shit.
The problem, actually, James, I'm sorry to get rude so quickly, is you.
I'm gonna bring up Ohio at any given cost.
Nobody should be putting this stuff in their body.
I smell metal and grease.
The perfect bourbon is Michter's 10-year-old.
Oh, that's junk. Oh, that's junk. Well, this first one we're drinking, so one of the reasons why I was really excited to bring this one is this is an 8.5-year weeded bourbon. And so...
And you the Whiskey Whisperer, hand-selected this barrel, correct?
I did, yeah.
Finger Lakes is in Wisconsin?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Come on, Paul. It's the Finger Lakes.
By the way...
It's New York. It's Burdett, New York. You don't know where the Finger Lakes are?
No.
You worked at a wine store. It's a huge wine region.
I don't... Yeah, no, I'm not that...
This is an 8.5-year weeded, and...
That smells great.
Again, nose, right? That's the first thing you get with some of these Dusties.
It's huge.
Yeah, this is 70% white corn, which I think is super unique because weeded bourbons, for those of you who might not be as familiar with it, weeded bourbons tend to be funky. White corn is not nearly as sweet as yellow corn. So you dump white corn in here with a bunch of wheat and it's even double funky. So this is 70% white corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley. And the barrel entry is 100. So they proof it down coming off the still to 100, and then they put it in the barrel. And of course, we barreled it at cast strength, and it came out at 105.6.
Wow.
After 8.5 years.
That is... I gotta think about how to describe this.
It's super different, right?
It's very different.
It's funky and earthy. I get the orange peel that I get from a lot of weeded bourbons. I get like vanilla custard for days on it. And then you get this, it's a little bit heavier on the oak than anything we've released to this point, and probably anything we will in quite some time. But it's kind of an old oak kind of smell, like old furniture oak sort of smells.
Yeah, so I was going to say, this kind of gives me a little bit of that varnish character to it. But... It makes me think of like when you have like a nice piece of wood furniture and you clean it with like wood cleaner, like an oil that usually has some sort of orange peel or lemon kind of aroma to it, but that mixed with the smell of like that wood kind of being stained or cleaned or whatever. But it's like creamy and round. So it's got like the citrus character to it, but it's not like a bright citrus.
Yeah, and this is about as close. I was really excited when we picked this barrel. I tried 4 different bourbons when I was there, and he did them blind with me. And as soon as I smelled this, I was like, "Oh, that's a weeder." And he kind of laughed. He was like, "Yeah, that's a weeder." But it's very much a throwback. Like if you are curious what a dusty whiskey tastes like, I think this is a really good example. It's funky, kind of like a cellar sort of funk to it, but yet it's got this very vanilla orangey sweetness to it, and then this rich oak backbone.
Yeah.
And for being 105 proof, because they proof it down, and this is a good lesson for people, not all 105 proof is the same. If you add water after, right before you bottle it, it's going to taste different than if you add water before it goes in the barrel. And that water sits there and interacts with the barrel for 8.5 years.
Yeah.
And that's what you're getting here. It's 105 proof, but the flavor is extremely rich.
Right. And I've actually, this was something I don't think I even really thought about until a couple years ago when we started doing this podcast and I started drinking more bourbon with you. And we started talking about some of these craft bourbons that are changing changing up the process in terms of whether they're doing barrel entry or what proofing down prior to barrel entry or after. And it is really interesting because although I don't think I've gotten to try a whiskey side by side where they did it one way, like they did one barrel one way and the other barrel the other way, it does seem to be consistent that proofing down prior to barrel entry is better.
Oh, absolutely.
Because although then you are kind of stuck with what you're stuck with when it comes out. If the intent is to bottle at cask strength, it doesn't really matter. But that the difference of having, your finished product be 40% or 50% of it was flavored and 50% of it was neutral plain water that got added in, and 100% of it being flavored by the barrel and matured by the barrel is huge.
And that's something I wasn't really expecting this whiskey to generate a conversation around, but it has, because we had somebody write us a few weeks ago that was like, if it's not over 110 proof, I don't even look at it. And we're in this period where there's a lot of...
It was James.
Yeah, exactly.
He's blackmailing himself.
I know. There's a lot of proof snobs out there, but not all proof is the same. Like, it depends on how you created the proof and how you got to that proof. This, to me, in terms of flavor richness, does not taste like 105 proof. You don't get all the burn of the alcohol that you would if this was 120 or 130, but in some ways it helps you pick out more of the flavors because the flavors are not being covered over by ethanol. And so I just think it's a really interesting sip.
I really like it.
It's super different. And I think this is going to be one of those ones that in like 3 or 4 years from now, when we look back, we're going to be like, yeah, that was a true one-off. I'm not going to run into another barrel of this. He just happened to have it sitting there, and he said, white corn's weird. It doesn't react the same way as yellow corn. It's not as sweet. So he said they tried it at 5 and it was gross. Oh. And then they tried it at 6 and it was gross. And he said, we tried it at 7. We're like, okay, it's coming around. Then he tried it here and they loved it. So
see, that makes me respect. What's the name of the distillery this is from?
This is Finger Lakes Distilling.
Oh, it's from Finger Lakes Distilling. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you saying that, and then I was like, maybe I was just thinking of the place.
Well, you were confused because you thought it was in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah.
You think everything's
on multiple levels.
In the intro, we know you don't know the difference between anywhere in the Midwest at all, so that's fine.
So, is the Finger Lakes in the Midwest?
Well, I mean, it's New York.
I don't think that's the Midwest. That's like the East.
It's it's sort of
on the East Coast, James.
not upstate New York.
Okay.
We're bad at geography. That's really what.
Well, I do know that even
it's
upstate
New England.
New York
it's
is
New
on
England.
the east
Yeah, it's
and
New England.
the east side of America. Okay. Regardless. Oh my gosh. It's been a while.
It has.
Regardless, I do think I respect the fact that they can admit that it was gross.
Yeah.
Prior to like we tried it, we hated it, it's been getting better though, because I think too often craft distillers have and even big brands, like we talked about this with the Woodford very fine rare.
Very rare.
The very fine, very rare, 17 years old, but not 17 years old, just has a 17 on the label. With the fact that they probably somewhere along the line should have stopped adding old whiskey to it because it got too oaky.
Yeah, it was way oaky.
But, someone there was like, wasn't willing to walk into that meeting and say it's gross, They needed to.
I thought you liked that bottle.
I like it less every time I try it, James.
It's been wearing you down.
It's been wearing me down. Every time I try it, I'm like,
it's so thin.
I'm like, James is right. And I hate admitting
I know,
that
you
to
hate
myself.
admitting. I know. I was really impressed with this. I mean, he pulled it out because we do something different. And I think it's a really good way to sort of get your brand out with different recognition through a different label and whatever. Yeah. But the feedback we've been getting on this is great. I mean, it's just, and this is one of the things I really like about craft. I would be hard pressed to go anywhere and find another bottle that tastes like this. Like, I don't know that it exists. I really don't. It's super unique. I've been drinking whiskey for a very long time. I've never tasted.
Did you
modern
ask them
bourbon
to
like this.
brew you another barrel?
They don't have any.
Well, but they could make more.
I guess they could, but then I'd have to wait 8.5 years.
Well,
and it might still suck. It's hard to say.
it might.
You know, each thing's a little bit. You know,
But it
each
might
thing's
not.
a little bit different.